I was supposed to be the worst Omega in New York, the gold-digging parasite who trapped the king of Wall Street. So why was my victim looking at me like I was the most fascinating thing in the room? The Plaza Hotel ballroom smelled like old money-expensive champagne and far too much arrogance. The elite of Manhattan stood around like vultures in tuxedos waiting for a carcass to drop. I stood by the grand crystal fountain holding a glass of sparkling water I hadn't taken a single sip from. I had been in this body for exactly 3 months. 3 months of wearing suffocating designer suits, eating bird-sized portions of caviar, and acting like an absolute terror to everyone who breathed in my direction. Why? Because the system in my head promised me one simple thing: play the villain, secure the divorce, take the $100 million alimony, and retire to a private island in the Bahamas. It was a foolproof plan. Be the ultimate nightmare, get paid, and get out. Then the mechanical voice exploded inside my head. A sharp chime echoed in my mind. Main task: publicly humiliate the target. Reward: 500 villain points. Failure level 3. Electric shock. I groaned internally. Put me back in my grave. Request denied host. Please prepare for target arrival. The heavy oak doors of the ballroom suddenly swung open. The polite chatter of 500 billionaires died instantly. Vincent Hayes had arrived. He was an alpha in every sense of the word. Cold, ruthless, and possessing the kind of face that belongs simultaneously on Forbes covers and criminal investigation boards. He had just survived a minor car crash in Central Park less than an hour ago. Rumors said a delivery truck ran a red light. You wouldn't know it by looking at him except for the slightly disheveled state of his dark hair and the tiny, almost invisible scratch on his sharp jawline. He looked dangerous. He looked incredible. I immediately put on my best evil stepmother face and walked straight toward him. The crowd parted for me like the Red Sea. Nobody wanted to be caught in the crossfire of the Hayes disastrous marriage. Vincent, I drawled, my voice dripping with aristocratic boredom. He stopped walking. His icy gray eyes locked onto mine. Oliver. I looked him up and down, making sure my expression conveyed maximum disgust. Did you walk here straight from a dumpster? That Tom Ford suit is entirely wasted on you. You look like a washed-up, newly rich, tragic mess. Gasps echoed around the ballroom. Several socialites literally covered their mouths. Outwardly, I was a masterpiece of cruelty. Inwardly, however, I was having a complete and utter meltdown. Holy Mother of God, I screamed in my own head. Look at those pecs. The fabric is literally fighting for its life. System, do you see this? Do you see how the shoulder pads sit? Take an 8K screenshot. Right now, I want to print his thighs on a body pillow. Vincent suddenly flinched. He reached up and pressed 2 long fingers to his temple, his eyes squeezing shut for a fraction of a second. He looked dizzy, probably a mild concussion from the accident. Perfect. More points for kicking a man when he was down. Are you deaf as well as blind? I sneered, stepping closer. I said you look pathetic. I wouldn't let my dog wear that tie. It is an embarrassment to the Hayes name. I want to chew on that tie. My inner voice sobbed violently. Look at his jawline. It could cut glass. Why is he so hot? It is illegal. Arrest him. Arrest him immediately. God, look at his chest. Vincent froze completely. His eyes widened slightly. He looked around the silent ballroom. Then his piercing gaze snapped back to me. His jaw clenched tight. He stared at my mouth, then slowly moved up to my eyes. Oliver, Vincent said slowly, his voice low, raspy, and strangely strained. What did you just say? I said. I raised my chin, crossing my arms defensively. That you are an absolute embarrassment. I would let him step on me. My brain added helpfully, completely ignoring my verbal threat. Actually, I would thank him for it. God, I hope he doesn't button up that jacket. 3 buttons. 3 unbuttoned buttons at the top of his shirt. It is an all-you-can-eat buffet, and I am starving. Vincent didn't slap me. He didn't walk away in disgust. He didn't call his security to throw me out into the New York snow. Instead, a very strange, very dangerous shadow crossed his face. The cold, unfeeling CEO of Hayes Corp did something nobody in the room expected. He smirked. It wasn't a polite smile. It was the dark, calculating smile of a predator that had just figured out how to unlock a cage. He reached into his tailored pocket and pulled out his phone. He dialed a number without breaking eye contact with me for a single second. Cancel the meeting with the divorce lawyers tomorrow, Vincent said into the receiver. His voice easily carried over the dead silent crowd. Yes, indefinitely. He hung up and slid the phone back into his pocket. I felt a freezing drop of sweat slide down my spine. That wasn't in the script. That wasn't supposed to happen. Warning. The system shrieked in my head, its digital voice glitching. Plot deviation detected. Target's hostility level is dropping rapidly. Host, what did you do? I didn't do anything, I mentally yelled back. Vincent stepped closer into my personal space. The heavy scent of dark cedar wood and winter air wrapped around me, suffocating and intoxicating. He leaned down, his lips brushing perfectly against the shell of my ear. I think I'll keep the top 3 buttons undone from now on, he whispered softly, his breath sending shivers down my neck. Since you like it so much. My heart stopped, my brain flatlined. Vincent Hayes pulled back, looking highly entertained by my sudden pale complexion, and walked calmly toward the VIP lounge, leaving me completely frozen next to the crystal fountain. Oh no, I thought my soul leaving my body. Oh no, he heard. The Hayes penthouse in Tribeca occupied the top 3 floors of a glass and steel monolith. It was a fortress of silent, terrifying wealth. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the Manhattan skyline. The marble floors were heated perfectly to body temperature, and the silence in the hallways was so absolute it felt expensive. I hated it here. Correction, the original Oliver Sterling hated it here. Personally, I would have happily lived in a broom closet in this place if it meant I didn't have to look at my bank account ever again. Unfortunately, I didn't have the luxury of enjoying my billionaire lifestyle. A mechanical chime echoed. Daily task: destroy target's personal property to establish a tyrannical household presence. Reward 300 villain points. Failure level 2. Migraine. I stood in the center of Vincent's massive walk-in closet, staring at a row of custom-tailored Charvet shirts. They were beautiful. The Italian silk looked softer than a cloud. Each of these shirts cost more than my rent in my previous life. Standing rigidly by the door was Harrison, the Hayes family head butler. He was a British man in his late 50s with the posture of a military general and the facial expressions of a marble statue. I took a deep breath, channeled my inner wicked witch, and grabbed a handful of the exquisite shirts. I ripped them off their velvet hangers and threw them onto the floor. Trash. I announced, my voice cold and bored. I stepped on a pristine white sleeve with my Gucci loafer. Absolute garbage. The threading is offensive to my eyes. Harrison's left eye twitched. Sir, those were tailored specifically for Mr. Hayes in Paris last month. Did I ask for a history lesson, Harrison? I snapped, glaring over my shoulder. Clear this out. Burn them. If I see this pathetic excuse for tailoring in this house again, I will have you fired. Outwardly, I was the devil incarnate. Inwardly, I was weeping uncontrollably. God forgive me. The mother of pearl buttons. The perfect stitching I am stepping on, $3,000. My foot is physically burning from the sheer financial sin. I am so sorry. Beautiful French shirts, I am a monster. Footsteps echoed against the hardwood floor. The heavy, suffocating scent of dark cedar and espresso filled the air. Vincent walked into the closet fully dressed in a 3-piece suit that made him look like a mob boss on his way to a hostile takeover. He stopped looking at the pile of silk on the floor, then at my foot resting on his clothes. Is there a problem here? Vincent asked, his voice a low, smooth baritone. I lifted my chin, crossing my arms defensively. Your taste in clothing is a problem, Vincent. It is boring. It is depressing. Looking at your wardrobe makes me physically ill. Your body in these clothes makes me physically ill in the best way possible. My brain immediately corrected. I want to be buried in your laundry basket. Please don't be mad. Please don't throw me out of the window. I am weak and I have fragile bones. Vincent stared at me. For a long, excruciating moment, he didn't blink. His gaze dropped to the shirts, then slowly trailed back up to my face. The corner of his mouth twitched upward. It was barely visible, but I saw it. I see, Vincent said calmly. He turned to the butler. Harrison, have all these thrown into the incinerator. Order a new batch. Let Oliver pick the color palette this time. Harrison looked like he had just been told to assassinate the Pope. Sir, all of them. Did I stutter? Right away, sir. Harrison bowed stiffly, though I could practically hear his British soul shattering into pieces. I stared at Vincent in sheer disbelief. That was it. He wasn't going to yell. He wasn't going to hand me divorce papers. System warning. Target's anger level is at 0%. Task completion is unsatisfactory. Immediate escalation required. Target the Jean-Michel Basquiat painting in the West Corridor. Are you out of your digital mind? I screamed at the system. That painting is worth $5 million. It belongs in a museum. I will be cursed by the art gods for eternity. Refusal will result in immediate level 4 electric shock. I gritted my teeth. Fine. If I was going to hell, I might as well ride first class. I stormed past Vincent without a word, marching straight toward the west corridor. The Basquiat hung perfectly illuminated against a dark slate wall. It was a masterpiece of neo-expressionism. It was raw, chaotic, and beautiful. I grabbed a glass of vintage Bordeaux wine from a nearby console table left there by a maid and stood in front of the canvas. Vincent followed me. Harrison was right behind him carrying a silver tray. Oliver, Vincent warned, his tone finally darkening. What are you doing? Improving the decor, I sneered. I am a domestic terrorist. My inner voice sobbed loudly. I am a criminal against humanity. Basquiat, please haunt me. I deserve it. I deserve the electric chair. I am so sorry. With a flick of my wrist, I threw the dark red wine directly onto the center of the $5 million canvas. The crimson liquid dripped down the chaotic brushstrokes, ruining the piece instantly. A horrifying silence descended upon the hallway. Harrison dropped the silver tray. The crash echoed like a gunshot. The poor butler clutched his chest, his face completely drained of blood. He looked like he was about to have a massive coronary event right there on the Persian rug. I stood frozen, the empty crystal glass shaking in my hand. I had done it. I had officially crossed the line. Vincent was a ruthless businessman. He destroyed rivals for minor inconveniences. Destroying his prized art collection would be the final nail in my coffin. I braced myself for the explosion. I waited for him to grab my throat to scream to call his lawyers. Vincent walked toward me slowly. His leather shoes made deliberate heavy sounds against the floor. He stopped right in front of me, his tall frame entirely blocking the light. He looked down at the ruined painting, then at my trembling fingers. He reached out. I flinched, expecting a strike. Instead, his large, warm hand wrapped gently around my wrist, taking the empty wine glass from my grip. He set it aside. You never liked neo-expressionism, Vincent murmured, his voice incredibly soft. My phone suddenly vibrated in my pocket. I blinked, thoroughly confused, and pulled it out. The screen lit up with a notification from the First National Bank of New York. Deposit $10 million. Memo, pocket money for interior design. I stared at the screen. My brain completely stopped processing information. Vincent leaned down his lips, brushing my ear just like he did at the gala. Buy whatever you want to replace it, darling. Try not to hurt your wrist throwing things next time. He patted my shoulder, once stepped over the puddle of wine, and calmly walked into his study. I stood in the hallway, clutching a phone with $10 million on it, staring at a ruined masterpiece. Behind me, Harrison pulled a small bottle of antacids from his pristine tuxedo pocket and dry swallowed 3 of them. System error. The mechanical voice sounded weakly in my head. Logic circuit failure. Recalculating. You and me both, I thought numbly. You and me both. The Hayes Summer Estate in the Hamptons was less of a house and more of a contemporary art museum perched on a private beach. It had infinity pools, private tennis courts, and floor-to-ceiling windows that perfectly framed the Atlantic Ocean. It was designed for relaxation. I was currently experiencing levels of stress that could power a small city. Ever since the ruined Basquiat painting incident 3 days ago, the dynamic in the Hayes household had shifted into an alternate dimension. I was still acting like a tyrannical, gold-digging nightmare. Vincent, however, had stopped acting like a ruthless Wall Street predator and had seemingly transitioned into a full-time psychological warfare expert. His weapon of choice, anatomical perfection. It was 8 in the morning. I was sitting at the massive marble kitchen island, gloomily stabbing a piece of perfectly roasted asparagus. The system was currently quiet, likely still rebooting, after my $10 million reward broke its logic circuits. Footsteps sounded against the imported tile. Vincent walked into the kitchen. He had just finished a morning run along the private beach. He was holding a mug of black coffee, and he was wearing a loose white linen shirt. 1 button was undone, 2 buttons were undone, 3 buttons were undone. I stared. I forgot how to blink. I forgot how to breathe. The crisp white fabric parted exactly wide enough to expose a terrifyingly perfect expanse of tanned skin, the sharp dip of his collarbones, and the distinct hard lines of his chest. A single drop of water from his post-run shower tracked slowly down his throat, disappearing into the dark shadow of the unbuttoned shirt. It was a targeted assassination attempt on my sanity. He was doing this on purpose. I immediately slammed my fork down and glared at him. Are you incapable of dressing yourself properly, Vincent? You look like a washed-up romance novel cover model. Button your shirt. You are visually polluting my breakfast. Do not button that shirt. My internal voice dropped to a feral whisper. If you button that shirt, I will riot. I will sue you for emotional damage. Look at that chest. You could grate expensive Italian cheese on those abs. I want to live in his shirt pocket. I want to be the water drop. Vincent didn't flinch. He didn't sneer. He took a slow sip of his black coffee, his gray eyes pinning me to my seat. He leaned against the marble counter, deliberately crossing his arms, which only made the linen shirt stretch tighter across his shoulders. It is a private beach, Oliver, Vincent said smoothly. I thought you appreciated a more relaxed atmosphere. I appreciate basic decency. I snapped, turning my head away haughtily. I am a liar. I am a fraud, my brain chanted. Please step on me. But then, as I stared out at the crashing gray waves of the Atlantic, the comedic exhaustion in my head suddenly evaporated. The laughter died. The ocean looked incredibly cold. It looked exactly like the freezing rain on the night I died in my previous life. My inner voice shifted. The feral screaming stopped, replaced by a hollow, quiet whisper. Why am I even doing this? I thought tiredly. Why am I constantly joking about his body? Because it is a distraction. I stared blindly at my hands resting on the marble counter. If I don't act like a thirsty idiot in my own head, the silence gets too loud. If I stop making terrible jokes, I will remember the truth. I will remember my business partner stealing my life's work. I will remember signing those papers because I was stupid enough to trust someone who said they loved me. I will remember dying with absolutely nothing, entirely alone. I swallowed hard, fighting the sudden terrifying sting of tears behind my eyes. I am in a novel. This isn't my world. Vincent Hayes is destined to hate me, divorce me, and marry Julian. I have to be the villain, because if I actually let myself be nice, if I actually let myself care about him, he will throw me away just like everyone else did. And I don't think my soul can survive being shattered twice. I have to get the money and run before he looks at me with that inevitable disgust. I took a shaky breath, preparing to throw out another cruel insult to maintain my armor. But I never got the chance. The heavy thud of a ceramic mug hitting the marble counter startled me. I jumped, turning my head. Vincent was no longer leaning casually against the island. He had crossed the kitchen in 3 long, predatory strides. He stopped mere inches from my chair. The lazy amusement was entirely gone from his face. His jaw was clenched so hard a muscle ticked visibly beneath his skin. His icy gray eyes were dark, stormy, and filled with an intensity that genuinely terrified me. He looked at me not with disgust, but with a raw, violent kind of protectiveness. Vincent, I whispered, my villainous persona cracking for a split second. What? He reached out. I instinctively braced myself, expecting him to finally grab my collar and throw me out. Instead, his large, warm hand cupped the side of my face. His thumb gently, almost reverently, brushed against my cheekbone. The touch was so tender, so completely at odds with his terrifying alpha presence, that it felt like an electric shock straight to my heart. You think I am dressed ridiculously? Vincent asked. His voice wasn't smooth anymore. It was thick, low, and incredibly heavy. I nodded stiffly, unable to speak. Vincent leaned down until his forehead was inches from mine. The scent of cedar and sea salt completely surrounded me, grounding me in reality, blocking out the cold memories of my past. Then let me be clear, Oliver, Vincent murmured, his thumb stroking my skin again, wiping away a tear I hadn't realized I shed. I am only ridiculous for you, and I have absolutely no intention of throwing you away. My breath hitched. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard it bruised. System alert, system alert. The mechanical voice practically shrieked in my head, red warning windows flashing behind my eyes. Critical out of character, detected target's affection meter is unreadable. Host abort, mission abort. I couldn't abort, I couldn't move, because Vincent Hayes was looking at me like I was the only real thing in a world made of glass. And for the first time since I woke up in this fake universe, I didn't want to run away. The annual Wall Street Charity Gala was the kind of event where billionaires smiled with their teeth and murdered each other with their investment portfolios. It was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, completely shutting down the Egyptian wing for the night. I stood next to Vincent, holding a dangerously full glass of a very dry martini, and watched the crowd part. Julian Vance had arrived. If I was the wicked stepmother of this universe, Julian was Cinderella Snow White, and an angel rolled into one incredibly frustrating package. He was the original protagonist, an Omega model and rising Hollywood star with spun gold hair, doe-like blue eyes, and a scent like fresh rain and vanilla. He was designed by the universe to be perfect. He was designed to be loved by Vincent Hayes. As Julian walked through the room, every Alpha's head turned, every Omega glared in envy, and inevitably his big innocent eyes locked onto Vincent. A mechanical chime sounded. The system's voice blared in my head so loudly I nearly dropped my glass. Critical plot event triggered. The protagonist has appeared. Main task: publicly humiliate Julian Vance out of sheer, unadulterated jealousy. Throw your drink. Make a scene. Reward 1,000 villain points. Failure level 5. Electric shock to the nervous system. A level 5 shock, I thought numbly. Are you trying to actually kill me? Plot progression is mandatory host. The male lead must rescue the protagonist from your cruelty. Prepare to engage. I watched Julian navigate the crowd, making a beeline straight for us. He looked like a glowing deity in his custom white silk suit. I looked down at my own outfit, a sharp, aggressive blood-red blazer that practically screamed domestic villain. "Mr. Hayes," Julian said breathlessly as he stopped in front of us. He offered Vincent a devastatingly beautiful, shy smile. Then, almost as an afterthought, he glanced at me. "And Oliver, I am so glad you both came. I heard the rumors about your marriage being under stress lately. It is so brave of you to show your face." It was a masterful insult, wrapped in sugar laced with poison. I gripped my martini glass tighter. I needed to throw it. I needed to scream at him. I needed to fulfill my role so Vincent could step in, protect his destined lover, and finally look at me with the absolute disgust I was supposed to receive. But suddenly, the comedic, thirsty voice in my head, the one that constantly screamed about Vincent's chest and shoulders to keep the fear away, went completely silent. I looked at Julian's perfect face. Then I looked at Vincent, who was staring down at Julian with an unreadable, dark expression. They looked so good together, like a painting, like fate. A heavy, suffocating weight settled in the center of my chest. It wasn't the system's electricity. It was just pure, unadulterated grief. "I am so tired," my inner voice whispered softly. The silence in my mind was deafening compared to my usual chaotic shouting. I should just get this over with. One last scene, one last horrible act, and then I can leave. I have to leave before I actually start believing that Vincent cares about me, because nobody stays. And if I stay and let myself fall in love with him, and then he leaves me for Julian, I won't survive it. Not again. I took a shaky breath. I raised my chin, putting on the haughty, cruel mask of Oliver Sterling. "A brave," I sneered loudly, making sure the surrounding guests stopped talking to look at us. "The only thing brave here is you wearing white after Labor Day, Julian. You look like a cheap napkin." Without giving him a second to respond, I flicked my wrist. The freezing martini splashed directly into Julian's face, ruining his hair and soaking the front of his pristine white silk suit. Gasps erupted around the Egyptian exhibit. The music seemed to stop. Julian stood frozen, dripping with alcohol and olives, his doe eyes wide with genuine shock and gathering tears. He looked incredibly fragile. He looked like someone who desperately needed an alpha to rescue him. I took a step back, bracing myself. This was it. Vincent was going to push me away. He was going to wrap his jacket around Julian. He was going to look at me with hatred. "Goodbye, Vincent." My heart broke quietly in my chest. Vincent moved, but he didn't step toward Julian. He didn't take off his jacket. Instead, the terrifying CEO of Hayes Corp stepped directly in front of me, completely blocking me from the crowd's view, shielding me with his massive frame. The pressure of his pheromones exploded into the room, a suffocating, violent wave of dark cedar that brought several people to their knees. "Security!" Vincent's voice rang out. It was calm, but it held the freezing promise of absolute destruction. Two massive bodyguards immediately materialized from the shadows. "Mr. Hayes!" Julian sobbed softly, looking up at him with tear-filled eyes. He threw it. "I have eyes, Mr. Vance." Vincent interrupted coldly, not even looking at the crying Omega. His icy gaze swept over the security team. "Remove this trash from the gala. He is upsetting my husband." The entire room stopped breathing. Julian's jaw dropped. "What? But he attacked me? You approached my husband and insulted his marriage." Vincent stated, his voice devoid of any human empathy. "Consider yourself lucky. It was only a drink. If you ever speak to him again, I will personally ensure your acting career ends before sunrise. Get him out of my sight." The bodyguards immediately grabbed the weeping protagonist by the arms and dragged him toward the exit. Julian's cries faded into the echoing halls of the museum. I stood paralyzed, my brain completely blue-screened. Vincent turned around to face me. The terrifying, murderous aura surrounding him vanished the second his eyes met mine. He reached into his breast pocket, pulled out a monogrammed black silk handkerchief, and gently took my trembling hand. Carefully, reverently, he wiped a stray drop of gin from my knuckles. "You are shaking," Vincent murmured, his voice incredibly soft, meant only for me. He looked deeply into my eyes, and for a second I swore I saw a flash of absolute heartbreak in his gray irises. "Next time, darling, don't throw it yourself. You'll get your hands sticky. Tell me, and I will throw it for you. Throw it." Critical error. The system began screaming in a pitch that sounded like digital agony. Plot shattered, protagonist expelled, male lead, affection at 500%, error, error, error. I stared at Vincent Hayes. He didn't care about Julian, he didn't care about the plot. He was holding my hand like it was the most precious thing in the world. And God help me, I realized I was already completely in love with him. The morning after the Metropolitan Gala, the penthouse was quiet. Not the usual expensive, peaceful silence of a Manhattan billionaire's home, but the heavy, suffocating quiet of a bomb counting down its final seconds. I sat in the formal dining room, staring blindly at a cup of Earl Grey tea. The system hadn't spoken a single word since last night. It hadn't yelled. It hadn't threatened me. It had just gone entirely catastrophically silent. And in my experience, when an omnipotent, plot-enforcing AI stops complaining, it means it has decided to stop negotiating and start executing. It was totally worth it, I told myself, tracing the gold rim of the teacup. Did you see the way Vincent threw Julian out? He looked like a mob boss protecting his favorite mob wife. God, I want to frame that memory and hang it over the fireplace. I was trying to joke to keep the terror at bay, but my hands were shaking so badly the teacup rattled against its saucer. Footsteps echoed from the hallway. Vincent walked into the dining room. He was dressed for Wall Street, a charcoal gray three-piece suit. His dark hair immaculately styled, his silver tie knotted with terrifying precision. He looked like power incarnate. He walked toward me, his icy gray eyes immediately locking onto my trembling hands. "You didn't sleep," Vincent said. It wasn't a question. I immediately raised my chin, putting on the sneer that had become my second skin. "Your breathing was too loud. It is obnoxious. I am requisitioning the guest wing starting tonight. Please don't agree," my inner voice whimpered desperately. "Please sleep next to me. I just want to smell your cedar pheromones. I am so scared." Vincent stopped at the head of the table. He didn't look angry. He looked intensely focused, like he was listening to something very carefully. His gaze softened, and he reached out his long fingers, gently brushing the side of my neck. "I will breathe quieter tonight," he murmured, his thumb stroking my pulse point. My breath hitched, and then the world exploded. Critical violation. The mechanical voice didn't just speak in my head, it ripped through my skull like a circular saw. Narrative collapse detected. Host deemed beyond repair. Commencing termination protocol. Level 10. Neural shock enforced. I didn't even have time to scream. An agonizing, blinding white pain tore through my nervous system. It felt like 1,000 volts of electricity were being pumped directly into my veins. The teacup shattered on the floor. My chair tipped backward as my muscles violently seized. "Oliver," Vincent's voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. I hit the marble floor hard. I couldn't breathe. My lungs felt like they were filled with crushed glass. I curled into a tight ball, my fingernails digging into the expensive rug, gasping for air that wouldn't come. "Make it stop," I screamed in my head. "Please. I will be the villain. I will do whatever you want." Termination in progress. 15%. Vincent was on the floor next to me in a fraction of a second. His massive hands grabbed my shoulders, pulling me into his chest. The terrifying alpha pheromones exploded into the room, thick with panic and aggression, trying to fight an enemy he couldn't see. "Oliver, look at me," Vincent commanded, his voice cracking. He pressed 2 fingers to my neck, feeling my erratic, terrifying pulse. "Harrison, call the medical team, now." I forced my eyes open. Vincent's face hovered above me, pale and horrified. I had to fix this. The system was killing me because Vincent loved me instead of Julian. I had to make him hate me. It was the only way to survive. With trembling, blood-stained fingers, I realized dimly I had bitten my lip completely through. I reached into the inner pocket of my blazer. I pulled out the folded, crumpled divorce papers I had been carrying for 3 months. Sign them," I choked out, pushing the papers against his chest. Vincent froze, looking down at the legal documents. "I am done," I gasped, tasting copper in the back of my throat. I forced my eyes to glare at him, pouring every ounce of fake hatred I could muster into my voice. "I hate you. I have always hated you. You are a boring, arrogant, pathetic excuse for an alpha. I only stayed for the money. Take your stupid company and get away from me." I waited for it. I waited for my inner voice to kick in and scream, "I am lying. I love you. Please hold me." But nothing happened. The pain was so absolute, so overwhelming that my coping mechanism completely shut down. There was no funny commentary. There was no thirsting over his shoulders. There was only pure, unadulterated agony and the cold certainty that I was about to die completely alone. Again. And for the first time since the accident in Central Park, Vincent Hayes was met with absolute terrifying silence in his own mind. He couldn't hear my jokes. He couldn't hear my apologies. He couldn't hear the desperate, loving screams that usually contradicted my cruel words. The radio had been violently unplugged. Vincent stared at me, his eyes wide with a sudden catastrophic realization. The crutch was gone. He couldn't rely on my inner thoughts to reassure him anymore. He only had the bleeding, broken man in his arms telling him to leave. "Vincent," I coughed, and a bright splash of red blood painted my chin. "Sign it." Vincent looked at the blood. Then he looked at the divorce papers. The temperature in the room plummeted. The alpha pheromones didn't just smell like cedar anymore. They smelled like a wildfire. Vincent didn't yell. He didn't call for the lawyers. His massive hands gripped the thick legal documents, and with one violent, deliberate motion, he tore them completely in half, then in quarters. He threw the shredded pieces of paper over his shoulder like they were garbage. My eyes widened in shock. "I don't care," Vincent growled, his voice so low it vibrated against my chest. He pulled me tighter against him, burying his face in my hair. His large body was actually trembling. "I don't care what you say. I don't care why you are pushing me away. You are not leaving this house. You are not leaving me. Termination in progress, 45%. The mechanical voice was getting louder, drowning out the sound of the world. Darkness began to edge into my vision. "It hurts," I finally whispered, the villain mask shattering completely. I clutched the lapels of his ruined Tom Ford suit. "Vincent, it hurts so much." Vincent's head snapped up. His gray eyes were entirely feral. He didn't know what was hurting me, but the sheer oppressive power of his S-Class alpha aura surged through the room, desperately trying to shield me. "I have got you," Vincent whispered fiercely, picking me up off the floor entirely. "I have got you, Oliver. Just hold on." As the darkness finally pulled me under, the last thing I felt was the desperate, crushing warmth of his arms. Dying in a digital void is significantly less glamorous than dying in the real world. There was no white light. There were no angels singing. There was only a suffocating, endless expanse of flashing red code and the agonizing sensation of my nervous system being slowly erased. Termination at 75%. Host neural pathways disintegrating. I couldn't feel my hands anymore. I couldn't feel the marble floor of the dining room. All I felt was the crushing weight of the system's punishment. It was tearing me apart, atom by atom, stripping away my memories of Vincent's face, Vincent's voice, Vincent's warmth. I just wanted him to be safe, my fading consciousness whispered into the dark. I just wanted to survive. Termination at 85%, commencing final purge. Suddenly, the red digital space violently shuddered. A sound echoed through the void, not a digital beep, but a low, terrifyingly human frequency. It sounded like glass cracking under immense pressure, and then, impossibly, a scent invaded the sterile digital space. Dark cedar wood, sea salt, espresso. It was an S-Class alpha's pheromones burning so intensely, so violently, that it was literally disrupting the neural link. The red code surrounding me shattered like a cheap windshield. Through the jagged cracks of the dying digital world, a towering figure stepped inside. Vincent. He didn't look like a Wall Street CEO anymore. He looked like an apex predator that had just found someone threatening his mate. The sheer force of his presence in my subconscious mind was blinding. Silver light radiated from him, fighting back the system's oppressive red glare. Critical error. The system's voice lost its mechanical calm, sounding genuinely panicked. Unauthorized entity detected. Male lead. You cannot be here. Return to the narrative reality immediately. Vincent didn't even look at the glowing red core of the system. He dropped to his knees, right beside my fading form, his large hands frantically grabbing my face. "Oliver," he commanded, his voice echoing with absolute authority. "Stay with me. Warning, alpha neural interference at dangerous levels. Remove yourself or suffer brain damage." Vincent slowly turned his head toward the digital sky. His gray eyes were entirely pitch black, swallowed by pure alpha rage. "You Vincent growled, his voice vibrating with a power that shook the foundations of my mind. You are the thing that has been hurting him. You are the thing making him cry. I am the narrative enforcer. I control this reality. I control my reality, Vincent sneered. He stood up, shielding me entirely with his massive frame. He raised his hand, gathering the terrifying, oppressive weight of his mental dominance, the sheer willpower of a man who bent entire global markets to his whims. Get out of my husband's head. He closed his fist. The digital world screamed. It was a high-pitched, agonizing sound of dying code. The red light exploded into a billion pieces, raining down like digital ash before dissolving into absolute beautiful nothingness. And then there was only silence. A steady rhythmic beeping sound filled the room. The sound of a heart monitor was the first thing to register, then the smell of premium antiseptic and fresh white lilies. I slowly forced my heavy eyelids open. The ceiling was a pristine, calming white. I was lying on a bed so ridiculously soft it felt like a marshmallow. I turned my head slightly, my neck aching. I was in a VIP suite at Mount Sinai Hospital. In the corner of the room, Harrison the butler was quietly organizing a massive bouquet of flowers. He looked like he had aged 10 years, his usually impeccable posture slightly hunched. And sitting right next to my bed, holding my hand with a grip that was borderline painful, was Vincent Hayes. He looked terrible. His $5,000 suit jacket was gone. His white dress shirt was wrinkled and stained with dried blood. My blood. His tie was missing. He hadn't shaved, and dark circles bruised the skin under his eyes. He had never looked more handsome in his entire life. Vincent felt my movement. His head snapped up, his gray eyes locking onto mine. For a second, he just stared as if afraid that blinking would make me disappear. You are awake. He breathed out, his voice hoarse and broken. Old habits die extremely hard. My brain, freshly rebooted and still traumatized, immediately went for the defense mechanism. I weakly pulled my hand, trying to channel my inner gold digger. This mattress. I rasped my throat, feeling like sandpaper. It is cheap. My back hurts. Are we bankrupt? I waited for the system to chime. I waited for my inner voice to scream apologies and compliment his exhausted face. Nothing happened. My mind was completely my own. The quiet was stunning. Vincent didn't look annoyed. He didn't call the doctor. He simply leaned forward, resting his elbows on the mattress, and let out a soft, dark chuckle. It was a sound that sent a very different kind of shiver down my spine. I will have them by the hospital and change the mattresses this afternoon, Vincent said smoothly. He reached out his thumb, gently brushing a stray lock of hair away from my forehead. Then his hand trailed down to my cheek. He looked at me with an expression that was equal parts sheer relief and devious amusement. Though I have to ask, Vincent murmured, leaning his face so close I could feel his warm breath against my lips. Since your little tenant is officially evicted, do you still want a great expensive Italian cheese on my abs, or was that just a Tuesday craving? My brain flatlined. My heart monitor spiked wildly, letting out a rapid series of alarms. In the corner, Harrison dropped a glass vase. A loud crash shattered the quiet, but neither Vincent nor I looked away. What? I squeaked, my voice cracking entirely. Vincent's smirk deepened. His eyes danced with absolute triumph. Or maybe you'd prefer I unbutton my shirt entirely. After all, I wouldn't want to deprive you of your all-you-can-eat buffet. You were starving, weren't you, darling? The blood rushed to my face so fast, I thought my head was going to explode. The realization hit me like a runaway freight train. He knew. He had heard everything. The screaming, the thirsting, the mental breakdowns over his shoulders, his jawline, his custom-tailored pants. He had heard me crying over a $5 million painting while physically throwing wine on it. He had heard me confess that I loved him. Oh my God, I whimpered, using my free hand to cover my burning face. Oh my God, let me die. Unplug my life support. Harrison, smother me with a pillow. I am afraid I cannot do that, sir. Harrison replied weakly from the corner, sounding heavily medicated. Mr. Hayes would dock my pay. Vincent let out a real deep laugh, a sound so rich and genuinely happy that it made the entire hospital room feel warmer. He gently pried my hands away from my face, leaning down to press a soft, lingering kiss against my forehead, then my nose, and finally right at the corner of my mouth. No dying, Vincent whispered against my skin, his tone turning fiercely protective but endlessly fond. And no more hiding. You are stuck with me, Oliver, even if my breathing is obnoxious. I stared up at him, my face still burning like the surface of the sun, but the cold, heavy fear that had lived in my chest for 3 months was entirely gone. "I want a divorce," I mumbled half-heartedly, unable to stop the stupid smile from pulling at my lips. Vincent smiled back, his thumb tracing my lower lip. "Too bad. I already ripped up the papers. And just for that, I am wearing a 3-piece suit tomorrow. Fully buttoned." You monster," I gasped. And for the first time in a very long time, I was exactly where I belonged. It has been exactly 3 months since the system was violently evicted from my brain by an angry telepathic billionaire. You would think that without a digital overlord threatening me with electric shocks, I would immediately transform into a sweet, docile, loving Omega. You would think I would stop complaining, start baking apple pies, and greet my husband with a soft smile every morning. You would be absolutely wrong. "This coffee," I announced, placing the bone china cup back onto its saucer with a sharp clink, "is a crime against agriculture. I am genuinely offended on behalf of the Colombian farmers who harvested these beans. Did you brew this with water from the Hudson River?" Vincent sat across from me at the massive marble kitchen island, reading the Wall Street Journal on his tablet. He didn't even blink. He simply reached up with his left hand and slowly, deliberately undid the top 2 buttons of his charcoal dress shirt. The crisp fabric parted, revealing the hard tanned line of his collarbone and the unmistakable shadow of his chest. My breath caught in my throat. Muscle memory dictated that I should scream internally and maintain a face of pure disgust. But the telepathy was gone. The system was gone. I didn't have an internal monologue to hide behind anymore. So naturally, my face turned the color of a ripe tomato. "You are deflecting," I muttered aggressively, staring at my ruined coffee. "Put your clothes back on. It is 8 in the morning. Have some shame." "I am simply adjusting to the room temperature, darling," Vincent replied smoothly, his deep baritone rumbling with amusement. He finally looked up from his tablet, his icy gray eyes crinkling at the corners. "Besides, I thought you liked the view. Or have you suddenly lost your appetite for, what did you call it, anatomical perfection?" I groaned, burying my burning face in my hands. "I'm going to jump off this balcony." "I would catch you," Vincent said immediately. It wasn't a joke. The absolute terrifying sincerity in his voice made my heart do a ridiculous flip. From the corner of the room, Harrison cleared his throat. The dignified British butler stepped forward carrying a silver tray with a fresh stack of mail. He meticulously avoided looking at Vincent's half-unbuttoned shirt. "The Morning Post. Mr. Hayes," Harrison said stiffly. He then pulled a small orange plastic bottle from his tailored vest pocket, popped 2 antacid tablets into his mouth, and dry swallowed them with the practiced ease of a war veteran. I peeked through my fingers. "Harrison, you know Vincent doubled your salary, right? You don't have to look so miserable." "Indeed," Sir Harrison replied, his face completely devoid of expression. "And I am currently utilizing that generous raise to finance my therapist's new yacht in the Mediterranean. Will there be anything else?" Vincent smirked. "No, Harrison. That will be all." As the butler retreated to the safety of the servants' quarters, the penthouse fell quiet again. But it wasn't the suffocating, terrifying silence of 3 months ago. It was warm. It was domestic. I lowered my hands and looked around. The space was still ridiculously large and expensive, but it had changed. There was a new neo-expressionist painting hanging in the west corridor, one I had picked out myself. There were soft, chaotic cashmere throw blankets draped over the austere leather couches. The fortress of silent wealth had slowly, stubbornly turned into an actual home. And, as for the original plot, it had completely dissolved. Julian Vance, the supposed protagonist of this universe, had quietly relocated to Europe after his disastrous attempt to cause a scene at the gala. Without the system forcing the narrative, the world simply moved on. I stood up from the bar stool and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Outside, the Manhattan skyline stretched out in all directions, bathed in the crisp, golden light of early winter. Central Park looked like a patchwork quilt of orange and brown far below us. I crossed my arms, feeling the cool glass radiating against my skin. A moment later, the heavy, comforting scent of cedarwood and espresso wrapped around me. Vincent stepped up close behind me. He didn't say a word. He just wrapped his large arms around my waist, pulling my back flush against his broad chest. He rested his chin on top of my head, letting out a long, quiet exhale. I leaned back into his embrace, closing my eyes. "What are you thinking about?" Vincent murmured, his voice a low rumble against my spine. "I am thinking about how stupid I was," I answered honestly. I spent 3 months terrified that if I showed you who I really was, you would throw me away. I thought I had to be perfect, or at least a perfectly entertaining villain. Vincent's arms tightened around me, and now, I opened my eyes looking out at the endless city. Now I realize that you are just as unhinged as I am. You actually like that I have a terrible personality. Vincent let out a soft laugh. He turned me around in his arms, his hands resting on my hips. He looked down at me, and all the amusement faded from his eyes, replaced by a raw, overwhelming tenderness that still made my chest ache in the best way possible. "I don't like your terrible personality, Oliver," Vincent said quietly. "I love it. I love the way you complain about the coffee. I love the way you blush when I look at you. I love the fact that you threw a glass of wine at a $5 million painting because you were trying to protect yourself." He reached up his thumb, gently tracing my jawline. "You don't ever have to act brave for me again," he whispered. "You don't have to hide in your own head. I hear you. Even without the telepathy, I hear you." I swallowed the sudden lump in my throat. I reached up and grabbed the lapels of his unbuttoned shirt, pulling him down just a fraction. "Good," I breathed right before our lips met, "because I am never going to stop complaining about your ties." Vincent smiled against my mouth. He kissed me slow, deep, and completely unhurried, like we had all the time in the world. And the truth was, we did. The countdown was gone. The script was burned. I was supposed to be the cruel stepmother, the gold-digging villain who destroyed a family and died entirely alone. But as I stood there wrapped in the arms of the most terrifying, wonderful alpha in New York, looking out at the rising sun, I finally understood the truth. Sometimes the best way to survive a tragedy is to just rewrite the damn book yourself.